The average American right now is paying over $750 a month just for their car payment. That is $9,000 a year, before insurance, before fuel, before a single oil change. And a huge percentage of those people are not even buying the car, they are leasing it, paying $9,000 a year for a vehicle they will hand back at the end of 3 years with nothing to show for it except a new payment cycle on the next one. But here is where it gets genuinely complicated. Leasing is not always the wrong answer. In some very specific situations, in 2026 specifically, leasing is the mathematically smarter move. And buying is not always the right answer either, especially if you finance at today's rates, trade in early, or choose a vehicle with terrible depreciation. The real math on this decision is more nuanced than every always buy, never lease take you have ever heard. And today, we are running every number. Welcome back. I am Warren. And on this channel, we follow the actual math. If you're about to make a car decision and you want the honest numbers first, hit that like button right now, subscribe, and let us get into the real cost of leasing versus buying in 2026. Before we run a single number, let me make one thing clear that almost every car dealer hopes you never fully understand. Monthly payments are the worst way to evaluate either a lease or a loan. Dealers know that most people anchor to the monthly payment. Because it feels manageable, it fits into a budget conversation, and it is easy to compare. But the monthly payment conceals the total cost. And the total cost is the only number that actually matters for making a smart financial decision. So we are not going to compare monthly payments today. We are going to compare total cost of ownership over a meaningful time period. That is the only honest basis for this comparison. How leasing actually works, and what you are really paying for. To evaluate a lease honestly, you first have to understand what you are actually buying. When you lease a car, you are not paying for the car. You are paying for the depreciation that occurs during the lease period, plus a financing charge the industry calls a money factor, which is simply an interest rate expressed as a small decimal. New cars depreciate most severely in their first 3 to 5 years of life, typically losing 20 to 30% of their value in the first year alone, and another 10 to 15% in years 2 and 3. A lease captures exactly that depreciation window and charges you for it. The residual value, what the manufacturer estimates the car will be worth at the end of the lease, determines how much of the car's total value you are financing. A higher residual value means lower monthly payments. A lower residual means higher payments. Here is the 2026 scenario from real market data. A $45,000 midsize SUV leased for 36 months with $3,000 at signing. Because you are only financing the depreciation, not the full vehicle value, your monthly payment comes out to approximately $550. Over 36 months, you pay $19,800 in payments plus the $3,000 at signing. Total cash out, $22,800. At the end, you hand the keys back. You own nothing. The cycle resets. One critical number to watch on any lease: the money factor. Dealers can and regularly do mark this up above the manufacturer's base rate and keep the difference as profit. Convert the money factor to an approximate APR by multiplying it by 2,400. A money factor of 0.00125 equals roughly 3% APR. A money factor of 0.00250 equals roughly 6% APR. Always ask for the money factor and verify it against the manufacturer's published base rate before you sign anything. How buying actually works, the full honest picture. Now let us run the purchase side of the same $45,000 vehicle with the same $3,000 applied as a down payment. You finance $42,000 over 60 months at 2026's average new car loan rate of approximately 6.7%. Your monthly payment is approximately $827. Over 60 months, you pay $49,620 in total payments, plus the $3,000 down. Total cash out, $52,620. At the end of 5 years, you own a car that is worth approximately $18,000 to $22,000, depending on the make, model, and mileage. Your net cost, total paid minus remaining asset value, is approximately $30,000 to $35,000 over 5 years. But here is what most comparisons miss: the period after the loan is paid off. Once that 60-month loan is done, you own a vehicle free and clear. If you hold it for another 3 years, which brings the total ownership period to 8 years, you have 3 full years of payment-free driving. The only ongoing costs are insurance, maintenance, and registration. In those 3 payment-free years, a driver who was previously spending $827 a month on their car payment now has that money available for something else: investing, debt elimination, building savings. Over 36 months, that is approximately $29,700 freed up. The side-by-side over 9 years, where the math settles. Now let us run the full comparison over 9 years, because 9 years is where the true difference between leasing and buying becomes impossible to ignore. The leasing scenario over 9 years means 3 consecutive 3-year leases on comparable vehicles, each with $3,000 at signing and approximately $550 per month. Total cash out over 9 years, approximately $68,400. At the end of year 9, you own nothing and you are starting lease number 4. The buying scenario over 9 years means one 60-month loan paid off in year 5, followed by 4 years of payment-free ownership of a car worth perhaps $12,000 to $15,000 at the end of year 9. Total cash out over 9 years, approximately $52,620 in loan payments, plus approximately $8,000 in maintenance over the full 9-year period for routine costs. Total, approximately $60,600, ending with an owned asset worth $12,000 to $15,000. Net cost of leasing over 9 years, approximately $68,400, ending with zero asset. Net cost of buying over 9 years, approximately $60,600, ending with a $12,000 to $15,000 asset. The effective total cost advantage of buying over 9 years, when the residual asset value is accounted for, approximately $20,000 to $23,000. That is the real math. Over a short 3-year window, leasing looks competitive. Extend the timeline, and buying wins by a meaningful margin, primarily because of the payment-free years that leasing never delivers. When leasing actually wins, the specific scenarios where it makes sense. Here is the part that most financial channels skip entirely because leasing is always a waste of money, is a simpler take than the truth. There are real specific situations where leasing is the mathematically or practically superior choice in 2026. Electric vehicles are the clearest current example. EV depreciation in 2026 remains extraordinarily high, 40% to 60% over 3 to 5 years for most models, driven by rapid technology improvements that make last year's version feel outdated, and by battery technology uncertainty that makes long-term residual values unpredictable. When depreciation is that severe, leasing transfers the depreciation risk to the manufacturer rather than to you. The person who bought an EV in 2022 and is selling it in 2026 has absorbed a depreciation loss that the person who leased the same vehicle avoided entirely. For EVs specifically in 2026, leasing is a genuine risk management strategy. Business use is another situation where leasing can win decisively. Business owners can deduct lease payments as a business expense in a straightforward, consistent way. Buying a vehicle for business use involves more complex depreciation schedules and Section 179 elections that, while potentially more valuable, require more planning. If you are using a vehicle primarily for business and you want the simplest, cleanest tax treatment, leasing has a real practical advantage. Manufacturer incentive programs also occasionally make specific lease deals genuinely competitive in a way that no purchase deal on the same vehicle matches. When a manufacturer wants to move inventory or support the launch of a new model, they may set an unusually high residual value and a low money factor simultaneously, effectively subsidizing your lease in a way that no purchase financing deal would. These deals exist, they are real, and when they appear on vehicles with strong residuals and attractive money factors, the monthly payment advantage over purchasing can be substantial. And if you drive fewer than 10 to 12,000 miles per year, change vehicles frequently, prioritize always having a newer vehicle under warranty, and value predictable monthly costs without maintenance surprises, Leasing is a lifestyle match that its financial disadvantages over long periods may not fully offset depending on your specific priorities. The hidden costs that close the gap. What both sides leave out. No honest comparison of leasing versus buying is complete without acknowledging the costs that both options carry, but that rarely appear in the headline numbers. On the leasing side, mileage overage charges, which in 2026 commonly run 25 to 30 cents per mile above the contracted limit, can add hundreds or thousands of dollars at lease return if you underestimated your annual driving. Wear and tear charges for anything the leasing company deems beyond normal use can surface at return inspection. And the acquisition fee, typically $500 to $1,000 charged at lease origination, is a real upfront cost that some lease advertisements bury in the fine print. On the buying side, major maintenance costs in years 6 through 10 of ownership are real and variable. Transmission repairs, suspension work, and other significant expenses that never appear in the first 3 years of a new car's life can emerge during the payment-free period and partially offset the financial advantage of owning outright. A well-maintained vehicle minimizes these, but they are a genuine consideration for anyone planning to own a vehicle for 8 or more years. The honest verdict: buying wins in the long run for most people who drive average mileage and hold vehicles for 6 or more years. Leasing wins for EV drivers avoiding depreciation risk, for business owners prioritizing simplicity and tax treatment, and for people who genuinely change vehicles frequently and value the warranty coverage and predictability of a perpetual lease cycle, provided they are doing so with full awareness of the long-term cost difference. Here is the real math in its clearest form. Over 3 years, a lease and a purchase on the same $45,000 vehicle have a relatively small total cost difference. And in some specific scenarios, leasing even wins that short-term comparison. But extend the timeline to 9 years, and buying generates a $20,000 to $23,000 advantage, primarily because the loan eventually ends, and the payment-free years that follow are something a lease cycle never delivers. The one thing both choices have in common is this: the average American is spending $9,000 a year on a vehicle. Whether that spending is building toward an owned asset or perpetuating an endless payment cycle is entirely within your control, but only if you run the real numbers before you walk onto the lot. Drop a comment below and tell me whether you lease or buy, and why. I read every single one. And if this gave you the honest math you needed before your next car decision, hit that like button, subscribe, and share this with someone who is about to sign a lease or a loan without running these numbers first. I am Warren, and I will see you in the next one.